Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Kane. The first thing I want to do here is a little bit of self-reflection, and I really want to point out how my playstyle has changed since Rebirth and maybe even the original Isaac to now. I definitely think I'm much more risk-averse now. I definitely don't take as much risk as I used to. I think the biggest part of that is that in original Isaac and even Rebirth, we had a lot of things figured out. We knew the room permutations, we knew what was coming up, we knew items that we pick up, which effects they had, and overall it just felt like they were much less unfair rooms than there were in Afterbirth and Afterbirth Plus. I definitely think that playing risky is still something that pays off in a lot of the time, but I definitely think it's much more riskier to kind of walk around with half heart or maybe even one full heart, just because there's so many room permutations where you will inevitably take damage, and they're maybe not guaranteed damage rooms, but just due to the fact that there's so many different permutations, there are just so many different enemies that you have to fight, it's much easier to take that one damage. And I still feel like maybe this game, or maybe I've been playing it for only a month and a half, so I don't really have all the rooms figured out, just because there are still rooms that I probably haven't seen in the game. So for that reason, it's a risky play, but of course sometimes you kind of have to risk it if you want to have a good daily score, or just have a good run in general. Overall, I am a risky player. I do like to take risks. I feel like it makes the game more exciting, but definitely since after I died 2 days ago because I had half a heart, and a fat bat managed to kill me because he was feared and he just shot in that particular direction that I was moving, it got me thinking that I definitely shouldn't be taking so many risks, especially when I don't have control over the many enemies and rooms I face. There are some things you can control to kind of maybe be a little bit less risky, to kind of increase your chances of not dying like a fool like I did. But I definitely think it's much more limited to the fact that overall the game has just gotten harder, and not harder, maybe a bit more unfair. And I definitely like that about Isaac. I like that some parts of it are inherently unfair, and that you have to take that into account. It's usually never as unfair that it would just outright kill you, but it's definitely unfair enough that you would take a single heart or maybe even a full heart of damage, just because you entered the room at the wrong angle, and maybe the enemy spawned and moved in a random direction, and there's nothing really you can do about that. Like I said, to some extent I like it, but I definitely think it does require us to kind of manipulate and change our playstyle to accommodate that. First of all, we definitely shouldn't be taking so many risks. I think walking around with even 2 health now is a much more riskier procedure than it was before. I would say 2 health is the bare minimum you should be walking around. And the fact is, there are even some enemies which can do 2 full hearts of damage. They're admittedly very rare, but it's not really that hard to take 2 hearts of damage in any particular room. The main reason why I say that is there are rooms which will hit you up to 3 times just because they are inherently maybe very small and there's really not a lot of places to go. And if your DPS isn't great, you're just gonna struggle to go along that. So I would say the 2 hearts are at the minimum of what I would do to feel safe when I actually kind of traverse the floor and try to explore all the rooms. A few things that you kind of have to keep in mind is if you really don't want to take risks, I feel like there are some things that we can do just by not knowing what the floor is, but maybe just having some educated guesses. I think a big part of that is just in which order you explore the rooms in. I definitely think there are a few basic things that people should do if they want to increase their overall score on a daily run. And I think the main thing is that you should explore the floor first before you go to the boss. And especially if I don't have any other cards, but finding something like a High Priestess when you're weak is such a big help because it essentially one-shots the boss. But you never know, maybe you can find a Perto rune, a Devil Deal appears, and you really would want that Perto rune for the Devil Deal, and then maybe you roll that into a really good item. Overall, there's just a lot of cards and just items, trinkets, things like that you can get that will really help you out on beating the boss. And I think that's one of the big parts of exploration that not a lot of people get. I think a lot of other things apply too, and I like, for example, if you have an active charge, it's definitely important which order you visit the rooms in. And I think an even bigger part of that comes down to when you feel like you're moving in the right direction and when it's a good idea to backtrack. It's not always a good idea to actually go to the end of the path you're kind of leading to a dead end, and then when you arrive at that dead end, to retrace your steps back all the way. If you're going in a way and you feel like you might hit a dead end, it's not that bad of an idea to just go to the opposite side of the floor and explore back in that direction. So let's say, just for example, that you had a linear path from left to right and you spawn right in the middle, and let's say that there are 10 paths to each direction. Okay, definitely the optimal way of going about it here to find where the boss room is probably going to the right and then going to the left as well. But what I'm trying to say is if you go 2 rooms to the left and you see that there isn't a boss room there, it's probably also a good idea to go 5 rooms to the right, so that means you explore 2 rooms on the right from the middle. And kind of zigzag alongside it. Of course, games or floors in Isaac aren't as linear, which means you kind of have to apply that concept in a much more convoluted way. But nevertheless, I still feel like, and you know what I'm saying. And when you do that, it kind of increases your chances of finding not only the boss room, but also other important rooms that you might want to find on a run. And that's definitely something like the shops and treasure rooms and things like that. If you have a pet and you're on a pet and it seems somewhat linear, which means that there are really no how should I put it, like different paths branching out of it, you know that you can find important rooms there, and for that reason it's a good idea maybe to backtrap and find other rooms. And that's just gonna save you on some time, maybe some speed, because if you do go to the treasure room first, you might increase your chances of finding a good item, and that of course then can help you clear the rooms faster, and when you do that, obviously your score improves. But besides that, also I think another big part of exploration is that you know how to encounter, or maybe how you should position yourself in a room. What you should never do, especially after the womb, is when you enter the room, just keep holding the fire button. There are enemies in Shoal and in the womb and in utero that will fire at you instantly as soon as you enter a room, so you should never be doing that. That's not really tied to exploration, but it's just something to keep in mind. Another thing maybe that's tied to exploration is that you should know your limits. If you don't have a lot of HP, it's probably not a good idea to go to big rooms or to small rooms. More so small rooms than big rooms. In big rooms, at least you kind of have move to maneuver, but usually they do encounter some very tough bosses and enemies which are kind of hard to deal with. Of course, there are still small rooms and just regular rooms which are very difficult, but I would say the small rooms are in general the hardest of them all. They contain the most annoying room layouts. Sure, they do have a potential to have a really good closet in there, but there's also a possibility of finding something like Ragman on the first floor. And finding Ragman on the first floor when you have little to no DPS is probably one of the most excruciating things a player can experience in this game, and you should definitely not be taking those risks. And besides just that one particular very rare room, there's a lot of other rooms which also maybe contain enemies which are very hard to dodge. And just overall, I would say don't go to small rooms unless you have to progress to the next part of the floor. So I guess what I'm saying is, what's important when you're actually exploring the floor to kind of optimize your pet, first of all, try to visit as many rooms as possible before going to the boss, and try to branch your pets out. Don't just follow one linear path, and especially if you're weak, don't go to small or big rooms, because they usually are trouble, and they're usually harder than they were. So only go to those rooms if you're forced to, which means that you have no other pets to take. And when you kind of branch out that way, I feel like your exploration bonus increases, just because you do tend to visit more rooms. But like I said before, you also increase your chances of finding those important rooms, and those important rooms are usually what makes this game just a bit more exciting to play, and they do make you more powerful, and in return, of course, you can explore other rooms even faster. I know that they didn't really talk about this daily that much, but that was mainly because I did want to talk about this whole concept of room exploration in general, because I think it's quite important. I never really did have a chance to, but this was also a daily where I felt like that would be appropriate. Of course, as we go more through the dailies, it's harder to talk just about the run, because I feel like I've said a lot about a lot of the items that I already own, but as you can see, this was a very particular run where we had Incubus, and Lil Brimstone, and we had penetrative shots. There was a choice of 8 items in Boss Rush, which was quite something. I didn't really know that combination, or maybe that room permutation existed, where you can get 8 items in Boss Rush, or of course you can pick one of those 8 items, you can take them all, but it's definitely something that I haven't seen before, and it seems to be quite rare, because as of now in 35 dailies, 46 dailies, sorry, I've only encountered or seen that room once, so that's quite a nice feature, maybe not a nice bonus that I didn't really realize existed before. And I decided to take penetrative shots over Holy Mantle, which was maybe a bad idea in return, because definitely Holy Mantle would have saved me more points in general, but I definitely feel like penetrative shots do provide for more offensive potential, and I think at that certain point it was really more about that I was trying to clear the rooms faster, because if I didn't clear them fast enough, I wouldn't be able to get to Harsh, And if you were kind of keeping track of the time, if I didn't take penetrative shots, I strongly believe that I wouldn't be able to get a hush, because I essentially beat Mom's Heart at like 29 minutes 55, and that was more of a judgment call. Definitely wasn't something that was intentional. I definitely think Holy Mantle is a better item than Sagittarius, which, like I said, gives you penetrative shots, but overall I felt like penetrative shots are still good enough and they will save me more scoring overall. Nevertheless, we did continue and finish this run in a pretty comfortable spot. It wasn't as bad as yesterday's daily. Yesterday's daily wasn't even that bad, it was maybe just, like I said, I was out of sync because I died 2 dailies ago, and I'm glad to be getting back into the groove. My voice is still just a bit raspy, so maybe I'm talking a bit slower than you're used to, and if some of you are really fans of fast talking, I'm sorry, I'm trying the best I can, but obviously you kind of have to cope with me just for a little bit. What's really the problematic about these dailies is that I have to record them in one day and then upload them the next day, because there's really no way for me to record a bunch of dailies up front and then upload them throughout the week. It's just not the format I was going for, and I really do like this instant interaction as well, so for that reason I'm trying to kind of upload them as fast as I can. I still hope that this video did give you some insight into my strategies, or maybe gave you some tips on how to improve your game, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of things we still have to learn about the game. I don't think I'm a good player, I don't think I'm a perfect player, obviously not a perfect player, but I feel like as I watch through these dailies and commented over them, we are all improving at a steady pace. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.